Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Truck Show. I'm your host, Gary-Dobbs, here with Thaddeus Archibald. We're talking about entrepreneurs and why you're getting lost out there, man. We've been seeing a lot of stuff happening. We're getting concerned ourselves, so we're going to kind of change up the format today. We're going to talk about really what's going on in the entrepreneur world. We're bringing to you Truck Show number 38. Glad to have you with us. We're going to just get the discussion going on what's going on, man, with the entrepreneurial world, man. I feel like the spirit is gone. Like, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are losing the essence of what it means to be an entrepreneur.
I feel like there was a thundering. I feel like during that Blab era, we were both there. We were on that train. We got on that horse. And
yeah.
I feel that is when, the internet and the entrepreneur were really communicating. And then all of a sudden you had the few handful of entrepreneurs out there, the spokes entrepreneurs, the talking ones, that say, look, I made millions of dollars. I worked really hard. And now all I want to do is just like have a camera on me all the time and tell you how successful I am and talk basically bad about you, or just not talk bad about you, but use really aggressive terminology to get their point across and say, you got to do this and life is hard and keep working hard and all this other kind of stuff. And for me, it's just funny. It's funny that those are the spokesmodels for what we're doing and for the entrepreneur out there. Because I don't think that it's a good look right now. In my opinion, in my honest opinion, I don't think that's a good look. Too many people are not focused on the right thing. That's what I'll say in the most politest way. Not focused on the right thing, and when you're not focused on the right thing, you hear all these entrepreneurs out here talking about their success, whatever it is they're saying they're doing, like that Ty Lopez guy who's always...
I know of another trip out there that, they use guys like that, right? Like sometimes we look at the ones that aren't doing it right because we feel like, there's something better. There's a better version that we can produce, and I don't see anybody else producing it, so I'll produce it.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing Trump's got to be careful of is don't put too much attention on what you don't like, because I feel like I know that you're going to end up becoming just another version if you're not careful. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, let it be an inspiration, but then to go and start your own, but then you really got to focus on your own. Like, well, what's of your own creativity that you're putting into this to create a much better version, and really pushing yourself, to come up with ideas and come up with solutions to be able to actually make that happen.
The whole thing is how you really being unique. And I think that is so difficult for people to differentiate between the model of what is successful and then creating your own successful model off of what is successful. And that is basically saying, like, wait a second. I understand there's people out there who likes cold water. I'm going to sell a bottle of cold water in Wawa or any kind of whatever it is. I'm going to sell my cold bottle. But then there's like 50 other cold bottles of water. Then it comes down to the type of the bottle that you have and the size of the bottle and all these other kind of things. Question is, how can you make your bottle stand out? How can you make yourself stand out? Because the market is already flooded. We all know that. And I started learning, and I've been doing calling, because I do work personally as a side thing that I do, as a hobby for now. But I see that the hobby is like paying dividends of music. So I call, record labels and publishers and A&Rs every single day. And you know what? I'm just learning how to communicate my agenda. And once I understand how to communicate my agenda, and I noticed this, the evolution of my ability to communicate with these high executives, because I'm not just talking to, like, my my data bank or my CRM of numbers of important people on that level, these are the presidents
Yeah.
and the CEOs of the company. So this is what I get 99% of the time. How'd you get my number? That is the first thing.
Uh-huh.
Because they don't know who I am. And yeah, it is a cold call, but they have to respect the fact that I'm calling somebody. I'll say, I'm going to go to the very top because you're going to be the decision maker. If I call one of your little goonies, guess what's going to end up happening? They're going to say, go here and go there. But if I could talk to you, if I can whisper in your ear something sweet and soft and whatever it is that it'll take to get 5 more seconds of your attention, that's all I need. If I can just get that 5 more seconds of undivided attention and a pitch in whatever it is that I'm doing, I know for sure that there's a very high success rate. And I feel like that part of the entrepreneur has been lost. That a little bit of hope and that ability just to say something and have so much content in what you're saying and who you are and how you stand up as an individual in a given situation, explaining a goal of yours or an idea or a place that you want to achieve because, number one, you don't have the money or you have the idea, but you don't have the people to help work together. So you're trying to get them together and trying to do things like that. Like you were talking about the whole research a couple of weeks ago. So it's a lot out there, and I feel like we need to work on that and start building that conversation up and getting those great minds back out there and let them know, like, hey, it's not, there's not just 5 entrepreneurs that should be flooding the internet with content and you can say, oh, this is this entrepreneur. Like, really, how many mainstream entrepreneurs out there that pretty much got a hold on their brand or their entrepreneurial, like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur? It's not that many of them. If you go on the internet, like, everybody can name about 5 of them. Are they good ones? Are they bad ones? But I'm talking about the up and coming ones. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about like the whole Piers, whatever his name, Bronson from Virgin Mobile, and who else? Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, those kind of people. I'm talking about the up and coming ones. There's not that many of them. So the market is wide open. There's a whole bunch of lower level people out there talking a good game, but not giving no real substance.
Yeah.
But that's just my
and yeah, I think so too. What's the right amount of information, right? Because I feel like so many other gurus out there that want to help these entrepreneurs, but usually when they put something together to sell to you it's going to hopefully grow and transform your business, it usually becomes information overload. Like the 10X Growth Con that's coming up in February next year by Cardone Companies. That's a 4-day event. Who in the right mind is going to go to a 4-day event and actually be able to apply everything that they get at that 4-day event, right? Because I've been in other industries when I had different jobs before, when I didn't own my own business, and I would go to these conventions. You would sit at these super conventions for like 3 days, right? Get all this material to do in your business, but this is not something that you can just do overnight, right? So that event is more like this hype, and it's just there to maybe get you excited, maybe get you to network with people, get you inspired. So I feel like going in, you need to know what it is you're looking for first. Otherwise, you're just going to go in, be overwhelmed, get confused about what direction you were going in the first place with your company. So when you get back, you're going to be lost, right? You don't want to forget your identity with why you started, like what's the mission? And why did you start your business? What are you trying to do with it? Because you got to stay connected with that vision of your own, for your own company. You want to stay true to it. And I feel like when I read about the Trepps that have been around for decades and they built not just one but many successful businesses and has grown much bigger than they had ever imagined, it's because they had stayed true to what their initial reasons of why they started their business. Because that's like a pivotal moment, right? I feel like because we're talking about business and for entrepreneurs, that when you have that moment that causes you to do something, those usually are good sources of energy, like memories to fall back on, to keep you connected and to push you forward when days are hard, when things aren't going right, and you just feel like quitting and giving up. I feel like, I always like to sit back and look at and remind myself why I started my business. Why am I doing what I do? Because then I it's like giving myself a pep talk, and I'm reminding myself why I'm doing this and to not give up and keep going at it. And there was a reason, like the universe aligned at that time in that moment for me to realize that this was what I needed to do, right?
Yeah. And I feel like you're making a really good point. Because today, I had a discussion with this person who was doing some drywall work. He was doing it. I was just like checking in, making sure everything, whatever was going on. And basically learning how to do it myself just in case I want to do it if I build another house or something like that. So I can do it on my own and save money. But I don't know what a discussion went to, but went to kind of what you're talking about, where you come to that decision where you got to make a choice. And he was making this argument of like, basically saying, oh, well, I came from a different kind of environment or different reality or something like that. And I was like, hold on a second now. Number one, how can you tell me we're not in the same reality when you're actually saying that to me? So this guy was saying that to me. I know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what he was meaning. He was talking about, well, yeah, we're here right now, but we're not in the same reality because I have different things that I do and all these other things that motivate me and cause me and stimulate and all the other kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I agree with this. I understand what you're saying, but I also understand this right here. No matter where you exist at any point in time, there is the sun, there's a moon, there's the ocean. Those things are beyond. We can't deny those kind of things. And I believe, in my opinion, if there's things that you cannot deny, if there's things that work absolutely in one way, and there's never been a point in time that can prove against that, then I believe that in all aspects of whatever reality is, there's always a correct and ultimate way to think. There's an ultimate way to look at yourself, an ultimate way to do this right. There's an absoluteness about reality because there's only one way to be alive, and that is to be alive. And even if you try to say, well, what if you're a baby and it takes 2 years to understand your existence? Or what if you're in a coma? The fact that you are existing still is an example of the point I'm trying to make. Kind of going back to what you're saying, you got to make that decision on your own to choose beyond the circumstance, beyond the things that can cause you to do certain things. And the only thing that I agree with this guy on, and basically I had to point this out, is like, if somebody is physically forcing you to make a bad decision, then you're not making that choice. And you are a product of your environment. But I do not believe that is an actual case. I do not believe that millions of people are holding guns to the heads of a particular demographic of people and forcing them to behave in certain manners. I don't believe that. I believe that a lot of people have the choice and they're choosing to do the easier right. And that's what I'm talking about in trips. A lot of times people try to go and cut corners and they don't see the fruit of their labor because you cut corners. Because you didn't do your extra research on your market. Because you didn't put that extra time inside of your web page because you thought it's this right here and that right there. Or you watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos talking about, oh, this is how you make a viral video. But you don't even apply in those things that you learn from the YouTube video to even use that to your benefit. So there's a lot of times that people just, they look at things and say, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I know what I'm doing. And don't even apply. And I feel like that is probably the biggest issue that the Treps are having right now. They do not apply what they're learning. And I think, what do you say about that? What do you say about that from your opinion, from your experiences?
Remember, like what we were talking about before the show, about like losing your identity as a Trep, right? Like, I've noticed that when a lot of Treps don't know what to do and they are looking for maybe some mentorship or some advice, they lose their identity about why they are doing what they did in the first place. So they end up just getting some lessons or copying what somebody else is doing to try to move forward, right? You're losing your essence of an entrepreneur when you do stuff like that. Entrepreneurs, that's not an entrepreneur, right? So we all need advice and work sometimes. But I think that, you're creative enough to figure it out yourself. You just have to remind yourself, like, that why you got started, what you're doing it for, and to force yourself to be a little bit more creative. So there are certain things you could do to get into practice and habits of to make yourself more creative, right? So emotionally, what I've learned a long time ago was in order to be creative, I think you mentally need to be relaxed. You need to feel physically relaxed. You can't feel stressed at all. Stress to me doesn't make creativity. For me, creativity works in a space of relaxation, right? Like you're able to think a little bit freer, less under duress, and you're able to actually just open your mind up a little bit more and try to come up with some creative solutions. I feel like that way works a lot better for creativity. But we were talking about, this before the show, and we were talking about what your point was, is, I feel like these entrepreneurs are like a little bit losing their identity, right? And they start focusing too much on what they don't like or who they don't like, and they end up becoming another version of that.
Yeah, and then a pathetic version.
So and a pathetic version too, because there's a saying, right? Energy goes where focus flows, and it's sort of like, I feel like you create yourself that way too. So if you focus so much on something, it's going to have a major influence on what you're creating.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a trigger. When I see somebody doing something wrong and I feel like there's a better version, that just becomes a trigger. Once I decide to start it and run, I'm not thinking of it no longer. That's in the past. I'm done. It's not even going to influence what I'm doing now, because now I realize, well, I have the abilities and the skills to actually create something better, because I was looking at it because I enjoy it and I like what this, I like the business, or I like the product of this, but I just don't like the way that company's doing it. So I'm going to go and create my version, and I'm going to make a better version of it. That's what I was like. The point I was getting to with it is that answer. Is that like the?
Yeah, I mean,
is that the response you were expecting for what we were talking about before the show, or were you thinking of in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You just really drove that point in there. Just, we have to find our identity in general. I feel there's a lot of people out there who don't have an identity, and they're basically moving and grooving through reality, and really just they're zombies. They're just soulless, and they're just shells of other people's ideas. They're just literally a product of other people's ideas and opinions, and they just regurgitate that to feel a part of something, or to associate, or to connect yourself. Like, it's interesting that some people get into the entrepreneur groups because they don't have the tenacity, the panache, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They don't have that on their own, so they get into these groups and they try to align themselves with these people. And they end up being a collection of those other people's ideas, and they go out, and then when people start asking them questions, they start pressing them on certain things. You can really see that they're just doing something because of a trend, or they don't really understand how to define what it is that they're trying to do. And I think that's another big issue. The ultimate thing is definition. Who do you see as an entrepreneur when you look in the mirror? Are you confident in your abilities? Do you trust yourself? And can you complete something? Can you finish what you start? Those are the things that I feel like if you're an entrepreneur, you should always have those things in the back of your head. You know?
Yeah, because I think you got to have some practice drills, some exercises that you do, so that if you don't have an answer and you're working on something, but you can continue to just go through these motions and these exercises to try to drive out that solution that you're looking for. Because when I was in architecture, a lot of times you have this idea of something grand, and let's say you take the project on to go build it. You don't even know how to build it, but you just go start to build it, right? So it's not like you have a blueprint that tells you exactly everything that you need to do to make this idea an actual structure. No, you have to actually, like a lot of architects like Zaha Hadid, will go in with a concept when there is no precedent of any engineering construction on this planet that have ever built something to support this structure, right? So they're actually conceptually trying to create something new, solve a new problem, create something different, a different experience for people, and they end up figuring it out in the design process of actually building those buildings. And I feel like entrepreneurship is a lot like that, where it's like you're going into uncharted territories, and you know that there's a solution out there because it isn't, you didn't have it before. So you've got to go out and put on your explorer cap and actually go out and find it. And what we were talking, your point earlier you were making, and we were brought up about like these entrepreneurs that are copying others and they're getting a little lost. There's others like they become such an expert and they lose the entrepreneurial spirit, like with Gary Vaynerchuk. We were talking about, remember that interview like a year ago, and he's interviewing this kid, the backpack kid? Mm-hmm. See, it's like I've noticed him, he's just fighting to keep his position as an expert at what he does. He wasn't reinventing anything. He wasn't talking about or trying to lead us in a direction of something new that he's seeing with social media, because as the social media landscape grows and gets bigger and more attention, it's just going to naturally have problems. So I feel like the entrepreneur should be focusing on, well, what are those problems, and then coming up with ways to solve it, right? So a lot of the entrepreneurs forget about that, and I feel like they lose that spirit of the entrepreneurship. But somebody in a company that does that really well and keeps the spirit of entrepreneurialism there all the time is Jeff Bezos at Amazon. Because if you look at what they've been doing for a long time, they don't pay attention to what's popular or pay attention to what people are in demand of and asking for. They're actually trying to solve real problems to make the experience a lot better for people, because they understand that the customers don't understand how to fix something. They just want it fixed, right? They just want better service. They just want to get their items quicker. They want all these things. They want more and more conveniences. And that company's they do so well at it. And if you go in and look, it's what I learned. It's because at Amazon, they don't return any revenue to shareholders. They don't give profits away like that. They actually keep their profit margins down, but they reinvest so much back into R&D. So they're pumping a lot of money back into their R&D to keep themselves at the forefront and always constantly be growing and evolving with the market, right? Because there was a case study years ago, like I think it was like in the mid-'90s when Amazon came around, and they wanted to get to know the toy industry But, Toys R Us was the leader in toys. So they had a partnership with them, and they were reinvesting and growing to try to understand the toy market and trying to understand that side of the e-commerce so that they can grow that section, that market share inside of their company. And they reinvested and reinvested and reinvested and got better and better and wanted to grow and do things more. But you look at a company like Toys R Us, they didn't want to change. They didn't want to become a new and reinvented company that was solely online. They wanted to keep their retail store format. It's like they just couldn't let go of their traditional ways. And look at, Toys R Us filed bankruptcy. And that other idea that they had, Kids R Us, that I just was going to say, that was an idea that that didn't last very long, maybe 20 years, 10 years, I think, or 20 years, and that fell short. It made a little bit of money, but it wasn't inventive enough. It was just a different version of the old thing that they did, because their heydays was a long time ago. Their market share, their market dominance was a long time ago. Amazon came around and just ended up doing things better, right? And there's so many examples of companies out there that miss it. They see themselves as a leader. They don't give attention and give enough respect to these newer companies offering the same thing in a completely different way. They feel like, well, we have the majority market share, so why should we pay attention to them? And then look what happens. They end up getting crushed, like the way Amazon crushed Borders Books, like the way that Netflix and Amazon Video crushed Blockbuster. Blockbuster didn't even think Netflix was a competitor. They thought Walmart and other companies were the competitors. They just didn't get it,
Yeah, they lost focus.
Yeah, and they didn't see the shift that was happening. They still saw going out to the mall all day or just going to big box retailers was enough for people to get them out and go shopping. But what they didn't see was the huge advantages coming to e-commerce and the convenience of it and everything like that. They just didn't see all the changes that it can do and the improvements it can make for people.
Yeah,
and they got stomped. They got crushed.
I know it's sad
Mm-hmm.
when you get put in that situation and you learn the hard way.
Yeah, and going back to that kid, because I wanted to get your input on that. We're talking about entrepreneurial spirit. So remember, because it was funny that you brought that up before the show, and because I had recently just watched that too. And Gary Vaynerchuk was interviewing that kid, the backpack kid. He's doing that dance, and he's just wearing a backpack, and that was it. And somebody reposted his post with a hashtag, and it went viral. And Gary was just sitting there trying to figure out how it gone so viral, because it's like you could tell he was hungry to find that recipe.
Yeah.
Because he's an expert in social media, so he should know everything.
Yeah. And he wasn't able to get the real answers that he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just crazy that you did watch that too. To me, it's interesting that we have similar, we're paying attention. That means that we're in tune. That's all. We're in tune to opportunity, and we're just looking at it, and we're trying to say, okay, this is what we got to do. And I think that's a good way to be. It's a good thing to really understand, if you really focus on what you're doing and how to focus on the right goals and aspects in life. That's it's no way that you can't win. So exactly. It's always the little guys, the ones working inside the garage that have this crazy idea and they believe in it so much. And those are the people that the big companies are afraid of. Bill Gates has even been quoted saying it. He's afraid of that. He's afraid of the people working inside the garage. Yep. Like how we're doing, basically. Because what happens is we find the nerve that's connected to whatever it is that senses that feel. We were like, man, it has to be a certain way. Right now, I'm telling you, bro, on the social media, I'm slaying. I'm super duper slaying. Like, I'm really understanding, like, oh, this is how you can get a response on the internet. This is all you have to do. Now, all I'm doing
Yeah.
now is I'm taking that. I'm gonna continuously do certain things at a given rate, and then I'm gonna start taking people away from that platform and connecting them to another one. And I'm just learning that. How do you? Maybe we can do something about this too. But I'm just learning when you have successfully got some notoriety in one social media platform, but there's really no way to go just from the transactional interactions as just like a like or a comment. There's really no action. The action is acknowledging whatever it is that you're doing. Now, I'm trying to go from take that amount of people and then filter them down to the people who are everyday people like me, who have jobs and who don't spend all their time on the phone looking at like little memes that I created just to like provoke thought or to raise people's spirits up. It just doesn't really matter on what exactly it is. It's just the fact is what is out there. You know, I'm learning how to build this, build the notoriety, then take that and start transferring the wealth of the efforts that I figured out, that I planted in that, you know, the whole social mining, the whole thing that you were working on, and doing that. So it's not easy.
Yeah. No, I think you're like going to crack it, because I feel like it's like when you have a real desire to really want something, right? And let's just say, it's a form of attention on social media. And so you're looking to gain attention, but let's just say it's in a restricted area that you don't have access to, right? Nobody's giving you access. So it's just that it's like that old thing when somebody's trying to keep something from you, you just want it more and more, right?
Yep.
But if your desire to want it is huge, you're going to end up cracking it. You're going to find out a way. So if you stick to it, I'm sure I know you're going to end up cracking it.
I mean, I did it once, but it's whatever, man. It's kind of annoying how it happened, but it's whatever, man. It's just not even going.
Yeah, it is, huh? Because it's like almost, because like you said, it was like a little disappointing on what you had to post to get that reaction you wanted. That you probably, like, it seemed like you wanted a different message. You wanted to connect with people with a different message, but that's just. But they just weren't having it. They wanted a little bit more of that negativity factor.
Yep. And that's what happens, man. And it's like you also got to know that about your market.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, I feel like with entrepreneurship, you know, it's a really good thing to have support. Like if you've got like maybe you're going to provide a new solution or create a new business inside your company and you need to get some buzz going around, you feel like it's a good thing. You know, I think bringing people on and letting them know that, like, there's some exclusivity to join this group, come join us, work with us, we all got your back, you know, like you having that community behind it is a good approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody's going to agree with the program or what's happening, or a lot of people might doubt it, but I've been pretty impressed with a lot of different marketers that I know and other companies that they own, with the groups and the communities that they're able to build. And most of the time I notice it's because they all have each other's back. So like when somebody spots a problem and they're saying, hey, how do I do this? And like, oh, you got to join our program. And then it's like that person that's asking for help gets flooded with the whole entourage of this group, right? And everybody's just like, oh man, you got to join this group. You got to join this group. This is what's going to serve it. And that stuff is pretty good because you have that collaboration, and that community with people can really help bring your spirits up, especially if you're just trying to make some small wins to get to some big wins.
Yep.
That can definitely help because sales departments inside companies of all industries have used that for decades and decades. Like they've learned that like keeping morale up, keeping people hyped, and keeping the beliefs of the sales agents that they can reach their goals, reminding them that they can reach them every day and keep them engaged and working towards that's important. Because the ones that give up and they lose faith, they just don't put in the work. You get hyped up, you get a little support, you feel like you can do it, even though it's beyond your comfort zone. You end up surprising yourself.
Yeah.
But I feel like those things are pretty important. I mean, there's a pretty good aspect to that when it comes to entrepreneurialism, because like we've talked about this on past episodes where Sam Zell, and he was talking about the entrepreneurship, the spirit inside his company. He's learned the way to really keep that spirit and to keep the free form thinking inside his company, and giving people the permission to take chances. Is for one, is they cannot ever battle each other inside. They're inside within your own company. There are no enemies, right? Your enemy, the person you're going after, is across the street at the other company. That's the person you're trying to beat or take their spot, right? And I think it's true because I remember when we talked about that show, you and 20 Concept were talking about it with someone you knew, and you just felt like they just weren't on board with the team, right?
Yeah.
There was a little too much battle inside.
Yeah.
Where there should only be cohesion. There should be collaboration with the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that stuff is important. I feel like you got to keep that. So the optimism and positive mindset, that's where it becomes key. That's why I know that like guys like Sam Ziglar and other motivational speakers and stuff always talk about positive mindset, because you got to you need to keep yourself with that reminded, because you are going to run into problems or you are going to run into tough situations where you're going to lose. So you got to pick yourself up right away. You got to get past it right away. You got to get over it quickly. You don't want to stay. It's like you don't want to fall in that ditch and stay down there complaining about it for a week. You got to just figure out a way to get right out of it and keep going. Make that progress.
Yeah.
But I feel like, out there, the conversation and stuff, and what we were talking about, noticing these entrepreneurs, preps out there, I think they are losing a little bit about the identity of what they started to do, because it's hard. It's kind of like you're being shown all these other marketers. Like, marketers are really good at making it look like they're more successful than they really are, and so a lot of people buy into that, and then they just copy it, and then before you know it, you've got nothing but all these people marketing about how great things are, when actually, if you went and looked behind the scenes, it's all smoke and mirrors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a lot more interested in the R&D and the something working better with the company. So a lot of these marketing companies, like, I'll say one for example because I've tried it. It's called ClickFunnels. It's a pretty good software. I mean, the concept that they have to use it's a good concept, and I like the way they've reinvented having a website and doing something completely different. But they put so much money into the marketing, they just don't put enough into R&D. There's a lot of problems with the software, a lot of things that don't work right. There's errors with it. There's certain things you can't do. And I'm just like, these just seems like trivial things. These seems like all you need to do is just get somebody to work on it and get it fixed. Why ignore it? Why keep painting the car and keep putting on flashy wheels and rims when you're not even opening up the hood and fixing the engine?
Yeah.
That's what I feel like marketers do too much. They focus too much on the flashy aspects of their business to gain more and more attention and traffic so they can convert more and more sales, and they forget about reinvesting into their company and keeping the quality of the product there.
Yeah, I think it's just hard for people to accept that simple little fact
Mm-hmm.
that it's not about what the outside looks like all the time. Sometimes it's what the inside looks like. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who don't know that, who don't have any concept of what am I doing here and why am I doing this. They're just caught up in this motion of going in this direction like, hey, I have great ideas. I want to work for myself. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do these things. And it's like some hopeful, like childish idea. And you got people out there putting their money into the internet, and the internet is just taking it, laughing at them, getting fatter and fatter off of your lackluster efforts because you're not going and doing all your research and development. You're not doing everything to put yourself in the best position. And I feel like it's so easy to say this. It's so easy for me to be like, hey, why don't you just, if you want to walk, move your left leg first or your right leg first, whatever one you have your balance on, and then move forward. Keep on moving forward. It's so easy to explain it in those terms, but for some reason, if I don't explain to you the physics or I don't show you how to use your balance, or if you don't even grasp that understanding of like, this is where I'm standing right now, and this is how I move forward or backwards or lean to the left or to the right, then it really doesn't matter because you just don't have the concept. And I think you have people who want to be a trep. They don't have the concept of what a real entrepreneur is. It's not those 5 or 10 people that you know off the top of your head. You know, like I can quote like Pat Bet-David. You know, that's a person that I consider a real entrepreneur, and that's not just shoveling odorous excrement down my throat, telling me to do certain things. I think there's some things that I can really learn from what he's talking about, and he's good at delivering that. So that's one person off the top of my mind, and I feel like if you want to learn from somebody, I would learn from somebody like him, not to necessarily copy off of him, because we're talking about that earlier about, well, if you try to model up somebody, then all you're going to do is just be their clone. How do you create your own twist to a procedure or something like that and make it better and add to it and create? So it's just one of those things where, first, been saying this. Eric, this is like one of the tenets of a show. We try to tell, give your time, give yourself the space, or give yourself or say it to yourself in a meaningful way, and acknowledge that and reach after that goal. Because I feel like a lot of people are not doing that. A lot of people are just sitting there waiting for something to happen. Waiting for something to happen never happens, unless you're one of those people who believe that, billions of years ago, nothing actually happened and you're here right now. I mean, that's what some people believe. They believe that billions of years of nothing happening, the universe comes out of that. So if you believe that, if you're one of those people who believe that you can just wait and then opportunity will come there magically without no effort, without no ultimate first cause that's pushing something in a direction or not a direction, then I don't know what to say. But I feel like those people, not to insult them, because, hey, if you just believe in that kind of stuff, and that's your faith, and that's your religion, then, hey, it's okay. That helps you get by. But in reality, action causes a reaction, or action causes an effect. Action causes the consequences of your reactions, or reward, or your risk. If you're not doing none of those things, and you're just waiting, and you're just, like we said last week, just all up in your head, just committing to these ideas ideologically, but not applying them at all, you're never going to gain. All you're going to do is lose time and time again. And you're going to be in that great grave of entrepreneurs out there. And it was hundreds of millions of people that got up and gave up and started working at a job that is less than their desires and their dreams. They have become, an algae, you know what I'm saying? And just basically just living off of the simple reality of of living, and it's just, I don't know what to say. It's a difficult thing for people to accept, and it's hard for people, but that's how it is. and you learn the hard way. I want to learn the hard way. Do you want to learn the hard way? You do?
What's that?
You want to learn the hard way?
No, I was just, no, I wasn't agreeing with that. Oh, I got an echo on my end. No, it's like, of course not. Like, I know exactly what direction and stuff I want to go in, but I'll accept it if that's a route that if that's the best route to take. I'll accept it. But no, it's not like something I always want to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, you want things easier, but it's like there's a saying: if you do what is hard, your life will be easy. But if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. So I do take that into perspective.
Yeah.
Because look at like, let's say if you just use simple math, right? You're an entrepreneur. You know that there's a lot of work to be done. You're trying to figure something out. You're trying to build your business. You know that you've got a lot in front of you and you've got a lot to overcome, right? So each week you can work on your business. You can work 40 hours a week at it and try to make progress, or you can work 80 to 100 hours a week, right? So two people working in the same direction, the one working 80 to 100 hours a week is probably most likely going to reach success first. They have a much better chance of doing it, and they're going to get, they can get a lot more done. They can do in 4 months, like what it takes somebody working 40 hours a week to do in 12 months. So there's that's why a lot of the successful entrepreneurs and people we've read about looked, people have said, oh man, these people are crazy. Like, they had no life. Like, I can't believe that, like, Richard Branson didn't take one day off during his 20s. Like he had said, he had worked every single day the entire 20s.
That's how it was for me, man.
Lived. He knew
how it is for me. Like, in my 20s, man, I didn't take any vacation.
None?
None.
Always working?
Always working.
Because it's like you were focused on the goal, right? You knew that you were not going to quit until you scored.
Yeah. And I did. I scored big. I scored big. I scored well. Right? I scored well.
Well, and there's a secret ingredient to that, and it's the momentum. The ones you realize when you've been working so hard for so long at doing something like that, you don't want to lose that momentum, right? So most entrepreneurs, they'll do whatever it takes to keep that momentum going, because that momentum is really what also is going to help you catapult, launch, have like a huge quantum leap in your business to be able to get some success going. Because if you're like Elon Musk and you're building an electric car back when there was all these gatekeepers and even the laws were set up for fossil fuels and cars to manufacture cars with fossil fuels, there was no system to help support someone like him. He had to overcome a lot of opposition. There were so many barriers to entry because he wasn't playing by their rules. He wanted to create an electric car company, and he wasn't going to create something with fossil fuel demand. So, like, government sets up certain things to regulate to get things working and do a system, but what it doesn't take into account is the innovation. The system can't handle something completely different. That's why it's so difficult for entrepreneurs to become successful. That's why you got to stay true to why you're doing something. So getting back to our show topic, that's what it's going to take. You got to stay true to what you're doing, no matter what opposition stands in front of you. And there will be some opposition, right?
Mm-hmm. Opposition is necessary for growth.
That's true. Yeah, so I feel like there's so much to cover and stuff. It's got me to think a lot about what we're working on for next week's episode and what else we can be discussing to kind of to spark the entrepreneurial community, to get people re-engaged in it, and to really create something new, Because a friend of mine on Facebook posted a few days ago and he made a point that very few people rarely make, which is, does success only mean making money? Like, he kept bringing up the point, like, is it how many of you actually believe to be successful you have to make money? Is it always come with money, or is there another form of success? Of course there is. But I thought it was good. I like the way he framed it, because I realized I knew he was reminding people that you can set your goals towards something to be successful, and it doesn't have to just be on the money. So maybe that's probably a big deterrent that gets a lot of entrepreneurs, taking them away from why they did something, right? If you're only focused on getting the money right now.
Yeah. So what are some of the topics you're talking about? There's so much to cover.
Well, it just got me kind of like brainstorming to think about what we could be going on for the next shows. I think it's more like questions, a lot of things that popped up in my head about questions to see what out there, to actually see what others are doing. Like, we were talking about conventions and different events, like having a big event and experience for trips out there. I think it's become real popular. People want to go, but you just can't get any work done by going to these big events.
No.
When you go to like a big marketing event, like if you go to a 4-day event, you're not doing any work. You're just engaging with other people, you're listening and getting ideas. But to me, that's like watching a movie for a really long time. You're just sitting there absorbing what's happening. You're not doing anything. You're not getting anything done while you're sitting there for 4 days at this convention. So those things have not been a priority for me the last few years at all. But I put in place for what I want to happen for my business next year is to maybe start target and list some events that I'd like to be a part of, but more on in a way to produce and to promote my company and my business. And to invest in that next year. But for other topics for the shows, for future shows, I think maybe we should just start focusing on a lot more of the tougher questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs out there aren't asking enough questions to really get narrowed down and focus on what they're trying to deliver, so that when they become old and they've been running this company for decades, their legacy is clear. It's clear about what they produced. Like Frank Lloyd Wright, when he built his architecture, it was very clear that he was working lifelong on producing organic architecture. So he challenged the status quo of what architecture was when he created it. It's something that's been perfected. There's been lots of people that were extremely talented at it. And here came a guy that just came up with a new concept and created a new form of architecture that gained a lot of popularity. And he's known for that throughout his lifetime, along with a lot of controversy. But he's one of the forefathers of the modern architecture, And I feel like that's what a lot of the Treps could do, is try to challenge themselves as to see do they really have a new way of looking at things, something else to produce, to try to move things forward.
Yeah.
But I think I'm pretty much running out of thoughts and running out of things to talk about for our show today.
All right.
I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add.
No, man. I just felt like we had a good talk. We had a good discussion about finding yourself as an entrepreneur and really focusing on really that definition. I feel like that's something that's a theme, it's an underlying theme. If you want to be a zero sum, you start this capital without anything. You got to really be able to have a definite understanding of where you're going. So.
Yeah. That's for certain. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we wrap up today's show.
yeah, if you want to wrap it up, man, I'll cue the outro music.
Let's do it.
Ocean.
You know, it's been I think, an interesting talk today on entrepreneurial spirit. Really talk about what's missing out there. Maybe one thing you can think of for yourself as an entrepreneur is think about, what are you doing it for? You know, like, are you just trying to become another expert? We all know how easy it is to be labeled an expert. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're out there really trying to create a business. You've known some big problems that are not being solved. Focus on it. You know, work on it. You could be an employee inside someone else's company and come up with something completely new. Solve that problem. You know, you're an entrepreneur. You might be working with them. Maybe you stay with that company and you keep producing it, or you go out on your own and start your own company. But where you start at, there's definitely no limitations to it. You don't have to own your business to start thinking like an entrepreneur. But those are my final thoughts on about what we talked about. You had anything you wanted to add?
Hey, man. Every time I get on this show with you, man, we're talking about wheeling and dealing and what we're doing, man. I feel like when I was like 7, 8 years old, and I was out there with my friends, and I was just like, today we're going to do this big task. Like, my imagination, like, I was going for what was in my imagination. I was going for it. And I just get that feeling, man. And I'm an adult. And now, there's certain levels of control I have with the atmosphere that I can react to and interact with. And I can get more done. So that's a really good feeling to have, because if you believe in yourself and you take action, it may not happen right away, but you'll get somewhere. You know what I mean? I really believe that. Maybe other people don't believe that. They think, oh, we're being held down, and the system is against us, and all this other stuff. You know, while I was on this show, man, I just put out like more hope, less despair. That's what we need. You know what I'm saying? For real.
I think so too. Man. Let's keep the spirit alive.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today on the Trep Show.
And I'm Thaddeus Archibald. Peace.
And I'm Gary-Dobbs.